Fantastic. Great to see you here. Just to share a little bit about my story about how I got into sales. I didn't start off as a salesperson. Certainly wasn't a born salesperson. My first career was actually in nursing. And the reason I went into that field is because I liked the idea of caring for people for a living. But at the back of my mind, I was always thinking, what I really want to do is to help people en masse, right? And the platform for that was professional speaking. And so I realized after 4 years of nursing that wasn't going to lead towards that career path. So I thought I'd better change and probably start my own business. And if I wanted to start my own business, I probably should learn how to get clients, right? I had no idea, but I knew that I had to learn how to do it. So what better way to learn the skill of selling than to get a sales job? So I put my application to a company that fortunately accepted me even though I had no sales background whatsoever, and cut my teeth in the website industry, so selling domain names, websites, website marketing, that sort of thing. 5 years in that job, managed to move my way up in that company to reach the higher ranks. And after that was the time. I thought better start this is the right time to start my own business. So mind you, when I first started out, it wasn't easy. I can still remember the feeling of terror as I was trying to pick up the phone just to talk to existing clients to sell to them. I was that scared. I had dried throat, my heart was pounding, and my hands were shaking before I even drank any coffee. It's because of the sales profession that I got into coffee, by the way. But one thing that I've noticed about the industry is that there are still quite a lot of people out there who have the wrong idea about selling. They still feel that it's necessary to be unethical, to cheat people, to lie in order to be successful. So that's what we're going to discuss, as well as 3 practical tips to help you to sell more the ethical way. Right? That's pretty much the reason that I named my company Sales Ethos, is because I want people to understand that this is the only way to be successful, at least in the long term. And so before we start, what I'd like to do is to ask you 3 things. Firstly, I want you to have an open mind, right? So selling has a lot of negative associations and stereotypes. So what I'd like to ask you to do is to just open your mind to the possibility that things might be different, right? Some new concepts, some perhaps familiar concepts. If it's familiar, I want you to think reinforcement, not reminder, right? The way our brains work is that when we hear an idea over and over again, we start believing it, right? This is the way that our brains work. And so have an open mind, be fully present. So with one exception, please silence your phones. I probably need to do my one just before I forget. And finally, look for one major action item. Now, I'm going to give you a ton of content within the short time that we've got together, but if you try to do too many things at once, you're probably not going to do any at all. So just look for that one action item and leave a little space in your notebook to write that down so that you actually put it into practice. Now let's talk about sales myths. What are some of the words that come to your mind when you think about the word selling or salesperson?
In the past, I'd say hard sales.
Hard sales, yeah.
Not so much now, but in the past, I would say.
Yep, in the past. Well, it's still something that does exist, unfortunately. Yep, what else?
Hustle.
What's that?
Hustle. You have to hustle.
Hustle, yes, hustle is a very popular word, especially in America when it comes to the sales motivation. What else? What's that?
As an American, yes.
Oh, yes, yeah. How about you, Andrew? Pressure, yeah. All sorts of negative words, right? Now, here's the problem. If we have all of these negative words, even in our subconscious mind, it's going to affect our ability to sell. You see, most of our behavior comes out as a result of what's in our subconscious mind. If you have negative thoughts about selling, and you go out and you try to sell, you're going to think, wait a minute, I'm not a dodgy person, I'd better not sell. You'll self-sabotage yourself. You'll be afraid to ask closing questions. You'll be afraid to initiate conversations. So what we think about it on a subconscious level is of utmost importance. So let's handle these as best we can. Now, one of the interesting things about salespeople is that if you type the word into Google Images, this is one of the typical images that comes up, right? So the negative stereotype is certainly pervasive in our culture. So one of the top myths about what it takes to be successful in selling is that you have to be dodgy. Now, in this day and age, what happens when a company is dodgy in their dealings with their customers?
They get bad.
They get
They get bad reviews.
bad reviews, yeah. You see, back in the old days, marketers used to worry about this thing called word of mouth marketing. And now we have social media and online reviews. It's basically word of mouth on steroids, right? The moment you do something dodgy to a person, the word is going to get around and you're going to get shut down, right? So that's clearly not a viable way to do business. What about being pushy? Let's just say you're going about your work, you get a call on your mobile, you pick it up, and there's a pushy salesperson on the other side. What's your natural reaction to that?
Hang up.
You hang up, yeah. You immediately say, not interested. I've had some other people say that they'll actually intentionally waste the person's time. It's kind of like the fight or flight response, isn't it? You either hang up straight away or you do something nasty to the other person, which is not very nice. They're just trying to do their job, but unfortunately they're trying to be pushy. And the natural human response to pushiness is to push back, right? So if this ever was effective in the past, well, it certainly isn't anymore. And it certainly doesn't resonate with a lot of us as non-pushy people. The other misconception is that you need to be born with the ability to sell. So I was sharing with you before that I was a nurse in my first career. And in my nursing career, I looked after babies. Now, these babies, to my observation, none of them had any sales skills whatsoever, right? All they could do was pretty much feed, cry, and poop. That was it. That was their repertoire of skills. So it stands to reason that any skill, including the ability to sell, is learnable. I'm a living example of that. I'm a natural introvert, right? Yet, for some reason, God made me so that I want to do public speaking. So go figure. But I was really, as I mentioned before, I was really afraid of selling. I would have rather stand up in an audience of 30 or 40 people to give a talk. So that's a weird quirk about me. But selling is a skill that anyone can learn, and that's pretty much why you're here today, isn't it? Now, before I go into the content for today, I'd like to hear from you. What is your biggest sales challenge in this day and age? Cold calling, yes. Lead generation, the ability to call a business out of the blue where you don't have a prior relationship. Excellent. That's a good question.
Justifying value and upselling rather than just once you've already got a lead on, being able to actually justify the value that you put into your services.
Yeah, explaining the value or helping people to understand the value. Fantastic. That's a fantastic one. And just one more. What's your biggest?
Showing that you genuinely care about the outcome.
And showing that you genuinely care.
As
Fantastic.
Getting them to understand that that's what the focus is.
Yeah, fantastic. And the content that we're going to cover today is going to cover these three bases, definitely. The first thing that I'm going to share with you is how to sell like a doctor. The second thing is how to give value. And third is how to actually ask for the sale. And amidst that, we're going to show them how much we care. We're going to show the people how it is of great value to them. And there are some principles that will help with your cold calling efforts as well. Tip number one, sell like a doctor. Imagine this. You walk into the doctor's office. You've got a terrible headache that has been going on for days and days. You walk into the office. The doctor sits you down and says, "How can I help?" And you explain to the doctor, "Doctor, I've had this headache for several days." "All right, here's some paracetamol. I'll see you later." What would come across your mind about this doctor?
No knowledge.
No knowledge? Yep.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't care. Yep. Absolutely. He doesn't care, right? So it sounds like he's just trying to get you out of the door to get to the next patient, isn't it? Right? So what should he have done instead?
Ask questions.
Yeah, he should have asked some questions. That's what that's what doctors normally do. They try to get to the root cause rather than to fix the superficial problem, right? So in that same way, many people, especially salespeople, don't ask enough questions to understand what the root problem is before they make a prescription for it. Oh, you have a problem with your sales team? Oh, I provide sales training. I can help you to alleviate that problem. Or legal problems. Oh, you're having a problem with your contracts? Yeah, here's the solution, right? This principle applies to friendships as well, by the way. A friend comes to you and they want advice about their relationship, right? They explain the problem to you in a few sentences. Oh, this is what you should do. You tell them straight away, right? It doesn't come across very well. The better thing to do is to ask lots and lots of questions. So doctors typically conduct some sort of analysis, right? They'll ask the questions. They might even run some scans, do some blood tests. Then only they make a diagnosis, and then they recommend a treatment. So tip number one is to sell like a doctor, and what I want you to do is to recommend treatments for your prospective clients. They're coming to you with a problem that they need solved. Make sure you understand the problem fully before you make a recommendation. And that's a golden word, by the way, the word recommend. Here's what I recommend. And the reason that it's so powerful is because it positions you like the professional, the consultant, like a doctor. Use the word recommend. I highly recommend it. One of the techniques that you can use to improve your questioning skills is what's known as the 5 whys technique. Does anyone have young children in the room? Around age 6 to 8, around that sort of age range? Yeah, one? Okay. I've got 3 kids, 8, 6, and 1-year-old. And one of the things that kids are very good at is asking questions. Why? 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 In the same way, engineers discovered this technique for getting to the root problems of their engineering issues. So what would happen is a machine would break down. The engineers would ask themselves, why did the machine break down? Then they'll discover, oh, this widget wasn't working. Then they'll ask, why wasn't the widget working? Well, it wasn't working because this part had worn out. Why did that part wear out? It wore out because no one had checked it, even though we're supposed to check it on an annual basis. Why didn't we check it on an annual basis? Because we didn't set up a system for it, right? Then you've got to the root problem, you fix the root problem. In the same way, when you are in your sales meetings with people, you need to ask lots and lots of different questions. You don't necessarily have to ask 5 whys in a row, but when they give you an answer to your initial question, allow yourself to be curious. Find out why is it that this problem exists. What are the potential causes? What are the potential outcomes? Here's one of the key things that you need to do when you're asking these questions. You need to be able to foresee the future. Who here can tell the future? Anybody? No one? Really? I can. And I'll bet you can as well. Let me prove it to you. What day is it going to be tomorrow? There you go. You've predicted the future, right? And we have technology nowadays that can tell us what the weather's going to be like tomorrow and days after. But what about this? So thinking about your business, what would happen if you just stopped working altogether? What would happen to the business?
Go under.
Yeah, it would stop running. It would probably stop making money. You'd lose money, right? That's a prediction, right? We're all able to predict the future to some degree. And how is it that we're able to do that?
Knowledge.
Yeah, it's from our previous experience, our knowledge, and therefore we learn from history and we're able to reasonably predict. We're not always going to be right, but we can reasonably predict the future, what's going to happen. So this is exactly the same thing that you need to do with your prospective clients. you need to ask them questions such as what would happen if this problem weren't solved? Or what would happen if we did solve this problem? Essentially, you're presenting two futures for your potential clients. Future A is you continue with this problem and you face the ramifications of that. Or option B is that you get me to help to solve this issue, and this is the potential outcomes. So when you're asking questions in your sales interview, these are the types of questions you need to ask. These are the ones that are going to help you to get the sale. Because then they understand what they are really buying. They're not buying a product, they're not buying a widget, they're not buying a service, they're buying a solution to their problem. All right? And your ability to articulate that to them will determine whether you get the sale or not. Any questions so far? No? So have a think. What sort of questions can you ask in your next sales meeting that can help your clients to understand what the potential future is for them? Tip number 2, give value. Value is one of my favorite words in the world of selling. Now, here's a question for you. Which is more valuable? A diamond or a bottle of water?
Depends where you are in life.
Yep.
Plenty of people that want water.
Yep, exactly right. So in what situations would the water be more valuable than the diamond?
When you're broken down in the desert.
Yep, absolutely, right? So the reason that I'm showing you this is that value is dependent on the person and their perception. Diamonds, in fact, just as a bit of trivia, one of the diamond moguls has actually been quoted to say that diamonds are inherently worthless.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that the value is completely assigned by people, right? How desirable something is, it increases our value for it. If you're dying in the desert, the water is going to be extremely valuable. You wouldn't care less if someone had a whole bunch of diamonds for you, right? And so this is what we need to recognize, that everybody out there has perceived value about your product. And so therefore you have to take their specific circumstances into account before you try selling to them. And that's where the questioning techniques come into play. And here's a really important principle that you must apply to every sales situation. It's called the law of value. And the law of value states that a sale will only occur when the value far exceeds the price that you pay for it. A sale will only occur when the value, the perceived value, far exceeds the price that you pay for it. So you might be wondering and asking yourself, well, how am I supposed to make a profit if I'm giving all of this value to other people? That's not how businesses work, Ben. Come on. Well, let me demonstrate. So one of the services that I sold in the past was online marketing, right? Search engine optimization. So one of the things that I would do is I would, in the exploration phase, I would ask lots of questions to figure out what their website traffic was like and figure out, well, if you were to generate this amount of website leads, this is the amount of revenue that you would get. And so if their potential revenue was $50,000, then $2,000 to spend doesn't sound like very much, does it? Right? So they're paying me my company $2,000, they're getting $50,000 in returns. This is the kind of equations that you need to take into account when you're selling your services. Does anyone want to give their service as an example, and then we'll try to work out what your value is?
Debtor financing.
Debt financing?
Debtor financing.
Debtor financing. So how does that work?
Cash flow, financing cash flow
Yep.
on a weekly basis or a daily, weekly basis, giving access to unsecured funds
Yep.
that can help a business
Aha.
through the times when they're a little bit lean or need some.
All right, fantastic. Now, what would be the result of getting what opportunities would open up as a result of having that debtor finance?
Growth.
Growth, yep.
Being
Oh,
able
don't
to
shut the door.
purchasing more assets for sale.
Yep, yep, absolutely. So if you're able to put a number to that, so when you're talking with your prospective client, ask them, well, if you secured this loan, what would that enable you to do, right? And then the alternative is, well, what if you didn't get this money? What would happen then, right? So there's going to be opportunity cost. They're going to miss out on potential sales. And you need to explore with them what other problems. So in this sense, whatever interest they're paying would be a very small price to pay for the massive benefits that they're going to get. One more example? Yes?
Me?
Yes, yes.
Well, I'm in the web industry. I
Ah.
build websites, so we've sort of covered
Fantastic.
that.
Yeah. It's a good one. All right, so let's just contrast. So let's just say the website project is $5,000.
Yeah.
Right? So how can you help the client to understand that they're going to get much more value than what they're paying?
Just asking them how many conversions, how much is one conversion worth to you? And
Yep.
yeah, doing the calculation.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so you do the marketing as well with them?
Not the marketing.
Yep.
Refer them on to marketers.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. So then you're more thinking about the conversions, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. So you could explain to the clients that you could spend tens of thousands of dollars on marketing, but if they go to an outdated website, you're going to be flushing that money down the toilet, right? So that's where they're going to get their value. So always remember this principle: the value must far exceed the price that they're asking for. If you can't do that, then what's the use of transacting? If they're going to get equivalent value, it's a waste of time. They must always get more. There are essentially, yes?
What if it's a product and not a service?
Yeah, so for example?
So, for example, say it is you're a jewelry designer and you sell jewelry.
Yep.
Say, your item is $500. That's
Yes.
the product.
Yes.
How are you going to
Ah,
add
yes.
value?
Yes.
Like
Yeah, absolutely. So in the examples that we just talked about, those are for business to business, right? And what do businesses care about and what do businesses value? Money, right? Profit. That's pretty much why they do business, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We need to do that in order to make a living, right? But when it comes to consumer goods, then the equation's different, because in those situations, people don't buy jewelry so they can sell it off and make a profit, right? Or maybe they might, but most often not. They buy it for themselves. In those situations, it's perceived value, right? So I've got a friend that works in the luxury watch business. This is not a luxury watch. This is just an all right watch. So in the luxury watch business, the prices go for, like the lowest prices that they sell them for is $10,000. And the top one that I've heard him talk about is $100,000. Now, what would possess a person to buy a $100,000 watch? What might be motivating a person to spend that kind of money on a watch? Image. Status? I heard status? Yeah. It's how they feel about themselves and how they see themselves, right? So the emotional factor is huge when it comes to consumer goods. Black Friday sale just gone by. I bought myself a PlayStation, right? That's not going to make me any money, but I value the ability to play games on a really good console versus playing it on an outdated one, right? So that's why I justified spending money on that, right? So it's a different equation, but the main principle comes back to perceived value, right? Even if it's just purely emotional, that's still legit. That's 100% legit. In fact, even when it comes to business transactions, here's a really important principle to remember, that people make decisions emotionally, then justify it with logic, right? It doesn't matter how good your product is, if you have created a negative emotional experience for the other person, they're going to shut you down and not want to buy. So that's a very, very important factor that you need to take into account when you're dealing with people. Create a positive experience for them. Smile, handshake, be friendly with the person. These kinds of things will give you the upper edge over your competition, even if you're selling exactly the same thing. And I would know, I used to sell domain names, www.whatever.com. So these are the 4 levels that you need to take into account when you're presenting your product. You could sell just the product, and this is a laptop, right? Would you like to buy the laptop? Not very persuasive, right? You can talk about the features. Oh, this laptop has a really fast processor. It's got lots of storage space. You could talk about the benefits. With the storage space, you can store lots of music, you can store videos, you can store all your documents, and because it's fast, it'll save you time. But then when you talk about the value, you put it into their context. What would this laptop mean for you? How would it change your ability to get stuff done? Oh, you're a business owner. How would the portability of the laptop help you to get more work done? And as a result of getting more work done, how would that affect your bottom line? Right? So that's the value. It's dependent on the person's situation. Don't sell the product. Don't sell the features. Don't sell the benefits. Sell the value. Most of the time, you can actually skip over the product features and benefits. You don't even need to talk about the product. Like when I was selling technical products, I didn't even need to explain how it worked. They just wanted to know that it did work and what it was going to do for them at the end of the day. And here's another key principle to wrap up what we're going to talk about with value, and that is you must always give before you get. All right? You must always give before you get. The problem with most salespeople nowadays is they're trying to get something before they give. Contrast these 2 phone calls. All right, so phone call number 1. Hi, my name is Ben from Sales Ethos. Sorry to take up some of your time. I'll just be a couple of minutes. I just want to talk to you about my products and my company. We're the market leader in sales training, and we've helped companies to get XYZ results. Contrast that with, hi, this is Ben from Sales Ethos. The reason for the call is that I've been researching your industry, and I've discovered that there are some major updates coming up that I'd like to share with you to help you to prepare for the upcoming changes. Right? Notice how the tone of both conversations are very, very different. The first one is apologetic. Sorry to take up your time. What? You're calling me for the first time and you already want to take something from me. Is that right? Right? Contrast that with, I'm calling with regard to upcoming industry changes. You're giving something of value up front. This principle applies to cold calls, it applies to the consulting phase, it applies to every single aspect of the sale. If you're always looking for opportunities to give value to other people, such as today, giving free content, I'm not getting anything out of this, right? Look for opportunities to give away things of value so that people will appreciate that and they'll want to reciprocate. This is the wonderful laws that governs our planet. When you give and give and give, it comes back eventually. It's the great news, isn't it? Right? Same thing with raising kids. You give and give and give to the kids, and you hope that they'll love you back. They don't always, but they do most of the time, right? This is a universal law. You must always take the initiative, give value, and it will come back. This is how you build a business. By giving value to other people. Once you've made the sale, by the way, do you stop giving value? Of course not, right? You give more, right? Because now that there's a transaction happening, you're going to find ways to exceed their expectations, right? You're going to find ways to give them way more value than they were expecting. And that is how you build a business. Tip number 3, you have to actually ask for the sale. This is the part that a lot of people fear and are scared of. So let's make it nice and easy. When should you ask a closing question? I've got a picture here of a man proposing, and the lady's saying, well, we only just met. You wouldn't ask someone to marry you on the first date, right? Same thing applies with sales. You don't meet a person for the first time and you try to make the sale by asking them to buy straight away. There's no trust, there's no relationship, and it's just downright silly. And so in order to avoid this situation, what I want you to do is to ask trial closes. And what this means is you're checking in to see where they're at. How are they feeling about this situation before you actually ask them to commit? One of the examples is on a scale of 1 to 10, how close are you to making a decision? By the way, this technique has been used in the medical profession, it's been used in the coaching profession, and in the sales profession. It's used across the board. It's a fantastic question to ask. Very non-confrontational. And if they say a 7, what should your response be?
What are you hesitant about?
Yeah. Or what would it take for us to bring you from a 7 to a 10? Right? And then hopefully they'll be open enough to tell you what it is that's holding them back, or what other considerations they need. Another one, how are you feeling about this so far? The key word being feeling, right? Remember that emotions are the key motivator for purchasing behavior. People buy on emotions and then justify it with logic. But you do need the logic. You have to have the logic. If people buy on emotions and they bring the product home and they realize, why on earth did I buy this? Right? Has it ever happened to you? I know it's happened to me. You need the logic behind it as well. Otherwise, they're going to get buyer's remorse. They're going to want to return the product. They're going to regret buying from you. They'll cancel. Right? So you need to have the logic. And so you ask this question, is this making sense to you? Right? So these are the types of questions you can use to gauge where the person's at before you actually ask a closing question. What's a good way to ask for the order? What have you typically used?
How to do on a paper card.
Yep. Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah. Do you prefer credit card, or do you prefer to send us to send an invoice? Yeah. Perfectly legit. Any others?
I generally pass over a contract
Yep.
that goes through more detailed terms once they've given me a soft yes at least. Then
Yeah.
it sort of turns from a soft yes to a hard yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's nice and easy, isn't it? So here are the T's and C's. Here's where you sign. Right? It's not even a question, isn't it?
When did you want to get started?
Ah, yes, very good. When did you want to get started? It's very, very close to the examples that I've got up here. Here's one that's called the alternative close. Would you prefer the product in blue or white, right? So you're giving them options, but their choice of the option is an indication that they want to go ahead. So when I'm talking to my kids, would you like to pack up the living room or the bedroom? You see, selling skills are fully transferable to every other area of life. Use it.
School or work in the coal mine?
What's that? From the school?
Would you like to go to school or work in the coal mine?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Here's another one. When would you like it delivered, right? So you're assuming that they want to go ahead. This is the assumptive clause. And as was mentioned before, if this is making sense to you, then here's where you sign. All right. All right, let's test your memory. What was tip number 1? Fantastic. Tip number 2?
Give before you get.
Yeah. Give value. Yeah. Give first. Yep. And then finally?
Don't ask me to get married on the Thursday.
Yeah, that's good advice, isn't it? But yeah, just simply ask, right? That's all it takes. There's a really simple phrase that I've been constantly reminded of lately. If you don't ask, you don't get.
It's the same with reviews, ask for reviews.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you don't ask, guess what? You're not going to get it, right? Who's going to volunteer and then say, oh, that looks really good, where do I sign? You're very, very seldom going to hear that, unless the marketing has done a really good job, or you're Apple, and then people are going to come to you and buy. But you have to ask. Right? So that's it for today. Thank you so much for coming. And
Thanks so much, man.
yeah, I look forward to speaking to you again.